Hello, my name is Brendan Klein, and
I'm Naomi Brickle.
welcome to our second podcast called Two Voices, One Mission. And we are way too excited to get this started.
Yeah, we're really thrilled today to be talking about a super important topic and a very important film. Right now, there are so many people who don't know. In fact, this conversation came up at Thanksgiving dinner, and not one person in my family was aware that there is currently a bill sitting on the governor's desk that's been signed by both the Assembly and the Senate called the Medical Aid in Dying Act. And it's literally just waiting for the governor's signature. And we have a filmmaker, Reed Davenport, here, and he produced a really powerful film that takes on this topic. And I think what we'd like to do to get started is just show a clip of the trailer, the actual trailer of the film.
Elizabeth Bouvet is asking for help. Trapped in a useless body, she says she deserves the right to die quietly.
And what was your purpose in being admitted to Riverside General Hospital?
Ultimately, starve myself to death.
The more I researched, the more I began to think that Bouvet was still alive.
Requests for medical assistance in dying are increasing across the country. We're beginning to hear more stories about people feeling it's their only recourse from excruciating circumstances.
I didn't want to really end my life, but it really just came down to a matter of funding at that point.
The health system is basically going to tell you you should kill yourself because that's the cheapest option.
Many people are afraid of disability. They've never had to interact with it before. The decision makers are really ruining our chances of surviving.
I fear that this film will be dismissed as cynicism. But the death of disabled people has been justified for so long.
Doctors encouraged me to pull the plug.
This film is not about suicide. It's about the phenomenon that leaves disabled people desperate to find their place in the world that perpetually rejects them.
She's very bright, she's intelligent, she's attractive, but so what?
I need to find her. There are too many unanswered questions.
So, Brendan, if you don't mind, maybe
Sure.
I'll take a little time and just talk a little bit about Reed and
Sure.
and share his bio.
Absolutely.
So Reed Davenport, thank you so much for being here with us today. Reed is a filmmaker, and he's not just a filmmaker, he's an award-winning filmmaker. He has two films, Life After and I Didn't See You There, that were both premiered and won awards at the Sundance Film Festival. He's also produced, created several award-winning documentaries. He was named to Doc NYC's 40 Filmmakers Under 40, and he has a Master of Fine Arts in documentary and film and video from Stanford University in 2016. And Reed, I have to tell you that you made a comment in the film that you almost didn't complete that master's degree due to a professor that wasn't willing to accommodate. And I just have to say thank you for your perseverance, because the world is going to be a much more enlightened place because of these powerful work that you're contributing to this important disability space. So thank you so much for being here with us today.
And I will go ahead and... What was that, sorry?
Very happy to be here.
Thanks, Reed.
Yeah, thank you. And I was also going to add that I think from watching the film 2 times in a row I think, and watching you of really digging into information and really meeting so many um, people and really getting the story. And I think that really impact so many people. And I think really impact so many people and really I think it got a lot of people's attention. I think from doing this podcast, as I said earlier, we get more people's attention.
So, Reed, what we're hoping for today is really that by speaking with you and by having you share some of your own insights about the film, that we can inspire others to really go out and watch this film, to become more informed so that they can make their own impressions, have their own impressions, and be engaged in especially what's going on here in New York State. So, Brendan, I think, just to get us started with questions, well, first of all, Reed, did you have anything you wanted to say before we launch into questions?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, so then maybe we could get started. I know, Brendan, you had an observation about services that maybe you want to bring up and ask your question.
So I think the services that we have now, and I think the conversation that Naomi had earlier, I think it's not that I don't like the bill. I think the services that we have around is somewhat mixed into some are working, some are not working, some of them are not well, and I think we need to have all services accessible so that people can be able to live the life that they want to live, and be able to live a life and be able to go out into the community and be able to do things that they want to do, just like me, and be able to have fun, have a good time, social advocacy, and so many more. But I think if we don't have services, how can people do that? So, and that's that. And for me, I find the key to everything, and I think I may have found the key to this really powerful conversation.
So, Reed, just, one of the quotes that I think was really powerful to me, and it really, I think, did come down, kind of land on this idea of whether people have appropriate services. One of the things Brendan commented to when we first met and we're talking about this and preparing for today is that people just need to have services in order to live a good life so they don't want to die. You, in a quote in the film, towards the end, I thought was so powerful, where you said, in her quest to die, I don't know if Elizabeth was fighting or just giving up. And I'd just love to hear your insights, about that and about services and how that impacts this issue.
Yeah, I think that how the film tries to answer that question is that I think different audiences will interpret or answer one way or the other, or mix. Services is a big part of it. And it is also, the unemployment rate for disabled people is between 70 and 80%. So if you're not working, you are probably on government support. And that government support keeps you in poverty. Literally, you don't have enough money to be at the poverty line. So it services, it's adequate funding, and it's adequate health care.
Yeah, one of another really poignant comment for me was Alex Thompson when he was at the state capitol. Alex Thompson from Not Dead Yet, which is a group that is advocating against the passage of this bill, and there was a hashtag that was on the sign that said "Support for Living," which I found you know, well, for me, that really just hit me. And his comment that the health system is basically going to tell you to kill yourself because that's the cheapest option was just, you know, so harsh. And yet, it seems that what we see playing out in Canada, that those are actually things that are happening in people's lives. What are your comments or insights about that?
I think it's already happening in the United States. It might be outside of medical assisted suicide, but when you have insurance companies denying treatment for cancer, they basically said, no, you're going to die of it. And I think we are at a stage in American history where the government has never been so controlled by private industry, and the private industry has never been catered to as much by the government. So, I mean, insurance companies have always looked at solely the bottom line, and I think now they are having more and more freedom to really inflate the bottom line with no matter what method they have.
You know, it's interesting because this is not just an issue that impacts people with disabilities. It's also, I saw this recently play out with my mom, who's 91 and recently suffered a stroke. And after a few days in the hospital, the doctor saw she was making really wonderful progress. The rehabilitation center was impressed with the progress she was making and wanted to accept her because they thought she had hope for a recovery. It took us 3 appeals to actually get an approval, but that approval didn't come through a system. That approval only came when I called my state senator, and she ended up calling somebody really important who then called the insurance company, who I think probably agreed to it simply because they didn't want to have, you know, a political issue on their hands. So, you know, I can't agree more of the concern I have about private equity. So it's not just doctors and nurses that are making decisions, but it's also Wall Street shareholders and their wallets, and that becomes, I think, a real threat to all vulnerable people who depend on, you know, doctors and nurses. And speaking of doctors and nurses, Brendan, I know you had a comment or a point in the movie that really had an impact and some comments.
I think one of the clip in the film, that when I watched the film about Michael, when he was having a time in the hospital, they one of the doctors and made a decision about Michael to not live his life, and one of his wife had a conversation with the doctor.
Why don't we show that clip?
Yeah.
Why don't, if it's okay, why don't we show that clip now?
On that day at the hospital, Hickson found her husband's doctor in the hallway. What Melissa Hickson says happened to her husband and what the hospital says are in conflict.
At this point, the decision is, do we want to be extremely aggressive with his care, or do we feel like this will be futile? And the issue is, will this help him improve his quality of life? Will this help him improve anything? And will it ultimately change the outcome? And the thought is, the answer is no to all of those.
But what would make you say no to all of those?
Because as of right now, his quality of life, he doesn't have much of one.
What do you mean?
So
because he's paralyzed with a brain injury, he doesn't have quality of life.
Correct.
Who gets to make that decision whether somebody's quality of life If they have a disability,
Well, it's definitely not me.
Their quality of life is not good.
So it's not me. I don't make that decision. However, will it improve his quality of life? No, the answer is no.
But why wouldn't it? Being able to live isn't improving your quality of life?
So I can count with one hand the 3 patients that have made it through. However, his quality of life is different than theirs. They were walking, talking, and I don't mean to be frank or abrasive or anything, but at this point, we're gonna do what we feel like is best for him along with the state, and this is what we decided.
I mean, that doesn't make any sense to me to not try. I don't get that part.
And it's not easy, and this is a calculated decision, and we feel like this is what's gonna be best for him.
So what a powerful segment that was, and actually heartbreaking. I will say I watched this with my daughter who has a developmental disability, and that was a scene that Mindy also is really, really impacted by Brendan.
Yeah.
And I know you were too, and she was also angry. But Reed, I'd love to just hear more of your thoughts and firsthand experience about situations like this.
I mean, they don't have to happen. They happen, I think, regularly. Melissa Hickson, who is the widow of Michael Hickson, just happened to be recorded that conversation.
Yeah.
Medical evidence that happens all the time. The doctors have the ability to be the most privileged people on earth, and they hold tremendous power. And I think for decades, disability activists have been fighting against medical supremacy and trying to say that our disabilities are fine, we don't have to be scared, we don't have to be treated. We just really want to live our lives, and it's wild to think that ableism is kind of our subconscious body these are not addressed in a formulaic or systematic way in medical schools. Doctors are taught that they have biases, that there are widespread discrepancies between the identities. And again, I think it does have to happen, or we need medical professionals to be taught how dire their biases can be when they go unchecked.
You know, in the healthcare system, so in my day job, I'm involved with a project called Supported Decision Making New York, where we're trying to, which is really a project to reduce the role of guardianship and increase legal capacity for people with developmental disabilities. But really what's at the heart of it is autonomy. And a question that comes up a lot with family members who are reluctant or fearful to give up guardianship is, what happens if my child, my adult grown child, needs a medical procedure and refuses to have it? And you made a comment in the film, I wrote it down here, and I just want to, talking about the observation of healthcare providers having so much power and seeing every disability or ailment as a deficit and trying to fix them. And when it's not successful fixing them, eliminating them. And I think in the film, you really, it was poignant hearing about how all of these surgeries that Liz went through, that really weren't even impactful or effective, but caused her so much pain. And she had no choice in any of it.
And I'm going to add something to that. I think from my the conversations that Naomi had earlier today too is about doctors and nurses, and Naomi gave me a light bulb. So I think from the conversation that we had, I think nobody who has a disability who's going through treatment through doctors or nurses should never be treated the same way Elizabeth went through. And I think and what Elizabeth had, they didn't give her a choice to have a voice, and then give her a choice to speak out to what she needs and what she needs to what will help her. And so I think for anybody else who has a disability or has a family with a disability who's going through similar to what Elizabeth or Michael should not be treated the same way they've been treated. And that for me, what I like, and I don't really have a table, but I have for me, I have a bunch of options to that one of my favorite things to have options. But for Michael and Elizabeth, they didn't have an option to what they are able to do in that really difficult and disturbing. And then we have a clip also with Elizabeth and with Michael, so we be able to show that. But I think that from watching that, and I said I get irritated easily from watching Elizabeth, and it really disturbed. And I think I don't know, Reed, you want to add to anything I
Well,
said?
Brendan, before we
Yeah.
read the comment, I know there was something that really irritated you,
Mhm.
and that was, is it Mikal or Michael, his name?
Michael, yeah.
Yeah. When he talked about that long-term facility being what?
Have a one-way street. There's not a two-way, it's a one-way.
Yeah, so talk about that more.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, it was related to the fact that, it is much easier to go into a nursing home than get out of one. And B, you will die a lot sooner in a nursing home. They're pretty straightforward. There's not many other ways to interpret it.
Yeah, once you're safe, it's hard to have that freedom to go back into the community again.
Mhm.
But Reed, now I'd really like to, I think both of us would really like to hear more from you about the film.
Mhm.
I'd love to hear what parts of the film were most meaningful to you, your purpose.
Mhm.
Just love to hear more from you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, it's, as a filmmaker, I put everything that I wanted to say in the film. So I really like the idea that you can watch, or I hope you can watch a film without necessarily needing commentary from me as to how I think about this issue. I think what attracted me to this issue was this friction between progressive and disability activists who identify as progressives who agree that mostly everything except for assisted suicide. And I thought that ambiguity would be a good entry point for film. And then I read about Elizabeth Bouvet, whom I've never heard of before. And it's And I knew after I read about it, especially after I found out that we didn't know ahead of that about it, that it was definitely a film.
You know, something, just listening to you speak, that's something that really landed on me from this is that, you know, we live in a society where our politics has become very polarized. And so, you know, the team you're on, you just tend to default to agree to. And so frequently, you know, disability related issues are more liberal issues. And in this case, so is the Medical Aid in Dying Act, and assisted suicide in general. And, you know, it creates a conflict, I think, for people and a challenge for people to learn more, to be engaged and to truly make your voices heard. I think in this issue in particular, we have very vulnerable populations that are very susceptible to really negative outcomes, to you know, coercion, to pressure, to just an easy out. Anyway, I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
Well, yes, I agree, and I also believe that most progressives are not thinking about disability issues. So I really think the issues of disability are you know, completely ignored by the right, and it should be marginalized by the left.
Well, I like to think, you know, I know Brendan's done a lot of work. I've done a ton of work to really educate at least our local state legislators on issues. And,
Always.
And we are truly hoping that this podcast, this film, will further educate them. Anyway, Reed, just one last question. Like, I think I know it, but any last comments about your purpose in the production of this film?
I made this film because I was drawn to it. Because of the reasons that I outlined. Yes, I would love to have this. But my main goal for this film would be to help people realize that we don't support disabled people in this country. And I feel that most of my work has been making this film. And I made the film, and I have people I work with who are trying to get the film out. But most of my work is really done, and it's up to other people to watch it, other entities to program it, and if society is ready to hear these arguments in a meaningful way, then I think it will get out there.
So, before we wrap up, Reed, any just last comments? In particular, I'd love for you to share with our audience where they, you know, we'll be sure to include that. But where can people watch the video or watch the movie? I know where I watched it, but just if you don't mind sharing.
Sure, it'll be on PBS's Independent YouTube channel until the end of January. That's pretty much going to be the easiest way to access it.
Yeah.
So if you want to see it, go watch it before the end of January. Not that it'll be going away completely, but it's it's free now for those in the U.S. to watch it that way.
Well, I sure know it will not be going away completely because it's a really, really powerful film.
Yeah.
Again, I was blown away. I watched it twice. I watched it the second time with my daughter. She was blown away. It really moved her. I think it might have inspired some advocacy.
Yeah, definitely.
Brendan, what are any closing comments?
And I think if you want to find more information about Elizabeth or about anybody with Michael or anybody that we have mentioned, you can definitely go on the Life After website. I think it's .com. lifeafterfilm.com, and they're on social media, and they're on what you say on YouTube. So so you can learn more about this film.
And I've got a little bit of just a call to action. This is a very real issue, especially if you're living here in New York State. Yeah. This bill has been passed by our Assembly. Yep. It's been passed by our Senate. Yep. It is sitting on the governor's desk waiting to be signed. I see rallies all the time of our politicians and their friends saying how wonderful this bill is. And if you think differently, if you think there's just another side to all of this that you really want to ensure is made known to the governor before she makes the decision to sign it, I say watch the movie, become educated, call the governor. And Brendan, I know you had some thoughts about the governor and a nice one-liner.
Yes, I think and I hope many state leaders and state legislators are watching, but also most important, I hope the Governor Hochul is also watching and listening to this really powerful, our first powerful episode. And I hope that she will be a little 3 words of I hope she will be kill the bill, but not and be able to have more accessible services so that people can live a life.
Right on. Kill the bill and support people for living.
Yes.
Nice. I like that. Reed, thank you so much. Again, I'm humbled. I'm really humbled that you were willing to take this time to be with us. What an incredible film. I intend to get the word out to people, and I'm really, really grateful that you took the time to be here with Brendan and I.
And I hope you as well will also help share out this podcast, and so that more people can learn more about this and why is it so important that people that bleed, and also advocates, they have a voice and they need to speak out to what they want and what they need and to live in their. For me, I'm all about positive and nothing negative, so I hope they will be able to live a positive life.
Yeah, nice, love it, Brendan. Thanks, Reed.
Thank you, Reed.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Thank you.